Hello everybody, it's time for Master Game Analysis number 2. Today I've selected a random game and I've tried to make it a little bit more visually interesting. I had a complaint yesterday about not knowing who the players were, so I tried to look at the players and get some pictures and all that stuff just to make it a little bit more interesting. Still don't know anything about the results of this game, nor the moves of the game. I might look up some things afterwards. I don't know. To me, that's not the point. The point is just the moves on the board. I'll try to ignore the people in the game. But I had a request for that, so I'll go ahead and do it, just for fun. So here is the game on the board, and we have a couple of, I assume these are French people. Again, I don't know, and I'm not going to attempt to pronounce either name, but I did look up some pictures, and I assume that these are the right pictures. They looked like they were the right pictures, and you can see you probably see in the title bar there the names, and they look like they match up pretty well. So I'm going to step through the game, and once again I'll move pretty quickly through the opening because picking random moves out of a opening book without much context isn't going to be too big a challenge. I'm going to get past the first 5 to 10 moves fairly quickly, and might talk about the ideas of the opening as they go. Oh, I forgot. Okay, give me just a second here. That's not going to work out too well if I do it that way. So I'll need to turn on a little program that'll keep those on top. Give me just a second. Hopefully that'll work quickly. Yes, always on top. Sorry about that. Just totally forgot it. I'll remember that for the next videos. That should work now. All right, here we go. All right, so we are moving through the opening here. We've got the Queen's Pawn opening D4 and Knight F6. So typically here my ideas are to go ahead and get C4 as my second move as white in order to play Knight C3 as my third move and probably E4 as my fourth move. Now the idea here would be that we have to support E4 now since he's went ahead and guarded it with Knight F6. And it's similar to what would happen if he played D5 in response, which would mean that E4 square is then off limits for your second pawn move. And getting a big pawn center is something I enjoy doing in my games. And it's just a matter of taste, of course. So it's not too big a deal. Okay, going to step forward. Alright, Knight F3, which is going to protect the D4 pawn. It's clearing a little bit of a way for castling over here. If white were to play G3 and bishop G2, castling would be something that could happen pretty quickly there. Also, might look at something like bishop G5 and then E3 only after bishop G5 or bishop F4 in order to get the dark square bishop out, and then before you close off the diagonal to support D4. Supporting D4 comes with the side effect of actually what I would probably be doing it first for is getting the light square bishop out. So those are the kind of plans I'm thinking as white. Could also continue again with C4. Black has lots of choices at this point. Alright, so E6, and my brain tells me that move could transpose into a French. No, I don't know about that with the knight on F6. Let's see. With a knight on F6 and a knight on F3, I don't think there are many French transformations there, but E6 is a pretty common move in French. Obviously, it's the opening move. So the structure might turn out to be similar if D5 is played soon. I don't know, maybe a King's Indian defense? I'm not 100% familiar with those sorts of lines, so once again, I don't want to spend too much time in the opening. We're just going to go on through this. Okay, so there's the bishop G5 idea that I talked about. I suspect E3 might come soon. It looks like that's maybe the direction that white is heading. Okay, B6, obviously aiming for bishop B7, and there's the E3 move. Bishop B7, bishop D3, a normal developing move. Alright, I don't know the name of any of these opening move variations or anything like that. I don't know the names here, so I'm going to move fairly quickly. These seem like pretty standard things. Okay, so C5. This is black's attempt to make a claim in the center. And what black is doing here is attacking D4. D4 is white's center pawn. The only one of the 4 squares that's occupied by a pawn right now, the 4 center squares, is d4, and black has attacked it. So c5 has that purpose. It seems like black might want to be playing on the queen side here. Let's see. If white were to take on c5, then bishop c5 seems natural. The b pawn taking on c5 would leave an isolated a pawn. So that seems to be a little bit of a structurally weakening move. Naturally, though, I wouldn't assume, or I wouldn't think that white would want to take on c5, since that would be giving up a central pawn for a wing pawn pretty early and without much fight. Other options for white include c3, just ignoring it. If you just totally ignore it and recapture with the e pawn, that might be okay. It might also be okay to capture with the knight, although I don't think so. That would give black a chance to move towards the center with e5, and white would have to respond, so that move would come with tempo. So my thought here, c3. If you play c3, if you play c3, the c4 pawn is the c4 square is unprotected by a black piece, so black couldn't safely advance. So that's why I think right now c3 is probably the move. That's the way it appears to me. Let's see what white actually does. Okay, good. c3. Now for black. Now, yesterday I got a little bit bitten by not looking at tactics that had to do with pinned pieces and things like that. So I do want to keep an eye on things like moving this knight out of the way. There's no reason to move the knight out of the way. It doesn't really attack much. Say knight e4 obviously doesn't do a whole lot. Knight g4 doesn't obviously do a whole lot right now, but it could in the future. We want to keep an eye on the way things are developed back here. Right now, moving that piece to e4 would attack the g5 piece 3 times. Once by the knight, and then you have this battery of 2 pieces attacking it. And it's only defended once by the knight. So there could potentially be some tricks with knight e4 in the future, but there isn't yet. So something to keep an eye on. Or other discoveries. I mean, someday knight h7 may do something. That's way down the road and not likely for a while. Knight e4 seems like it could be a possibility. This knight on d2 is doing a job there right now, because tactics right now wouldn't work at all, because knight e4, you could just play knight takes e4, and then you've guarded that piece again. Removed the attacker, and now that piece is guarded twice by each of these 2 knights and attacked twice. A lot of those can not work also, because bishop takes bishop would be attacking the queen. Okay, so moving on. I didn't really decide on a move for black. Let's just see what black does here. Yeah, this was what I was thinking earlier, which was playing on the queen side. So now c4 is protected, and a c4 advance would be something that could work now. This blocks in this bishop a bit, where a bit means totally. So, I mean, on the surface it looks kind of ugly. How is that going to work out? Is this... I'm not sure what the plan here would be. It seems like playing c4 is going to completely close off the queen side, and this bishop starts to look kind of silly here. So what is the point? I mean, I know the point is to take part of the center and control squares in the center. I just don't see why the bishop is there. Is it just because there's no other place to put it? I mean, other options for developing the bishop would have been bishop d7 and bishop a6. Bishop a6, obviously... Bishop a6 is interesting, actually, because this bishop is white's good bishop. Bishop a6 is protected by the knight. So something like bishop a6, and the light square bishop for black is on a good diagonal, and the light square bishop for white has to move off of its good diagonal, although c2 is okay. So again, I'm not sure about black's plan for having the bishop on b7 yet, but it does look like black's plan is queenside play. Maybe knight c6 and rook c8, those kinds of things, for when possibly the c-file opens up. c takes d, c takes d, and then the c file is open. So as a response to that, what would white's plan be? White could potentially be worried about c4, which I'm not sure I would. c4, you just play back to c2 and you're still on a good strong diagonal, or even e2 to maybe redeploy over here. So I'm thinking bishop c2 would be the best there. And this is sort of a French-like structure again. I told you that earlier that it likely wouldn't transpose into a French line, and I don't think this is going to be a French line at all, mainly because there's no pawn on e4 or e5. But this structure is similar to that, and we're attacking white's pawn on d4 with c5. That's sort of similar, and also the Sicilian has that idea. So white's response here, likely just castle. I don't see any need to be in a hurry to do anything on the queen side. Once again, these pieces aren't active. The pawns are in a pretty, yeah, they're poised to do something, but they're not doing anything yet. You know, again, if c takes d4, you just c takes d4 in response. You've got the open c file. White can get there quicker than black right now, so it's probably not a good idea to do that yet. That's my general feeling. So I'm just going to castle if I'm white here. Okay, queen a4, a move I didn't look at all, and that's a pretty common theme. So why would white do that? There's no fork tricks going on there. This doesn't look like a tactical shot. It doesn't double attack on the king and anything else. I mean, it does defend the d4 square if black were to take. If we went take take, or if we went take, white could take with the queen instead of the pawn, but I don't see the point other than to keep the c file closed and maybe keep a bind on d4 with two pawns. It just seems like d4 would be a really terrible place to put your queen, but maybe it's not. Well, it is. It wouldn't stay there because of bishop c5 fairly quickly. Knight c6 would also develop with tempo if the queen were on d4. It's just not a good square for the queen, so that's not the reason. It seems like white could just play bishop c6 and end this, whatever it is. So again, I'm unclear about what this is. This doesn't seem... I don't see much reason for the move. I mean, I could sit and stare at the board for a while and see if I can figure it out, but my immediate inclination is I don't understand the move. So we're going to move forward and see what black does in response. My guess would be bishop c6. Unless I'm missing something, then I don't see why white wouldn't, or black wouldn't play bishop c6 here. Okay, bishop c6, and it always does feel good when my moves line up with the Grandmaster, who's rated 27-23. That probably doesn't happen very often in this game, but it's happened a couple of times, so that's good. Let's see. We're going to find out now whether white had a purpose for that, or if we just didn't see that bishop c6 stops pretty much everything that white could do on a4. The question is black's bishop being on c6 any different than it being on b7 in terms of white? Because I don't see a way that it is. In fact, it seems to be a more active square. Other than maybe it gets in the way of the knight developing. You know, you'd probably naturally want the b8 knight to come to c6, and now it can't. So that could be a reasonable point in the favor of that move, but in my view, white could have just played queen d2 straight away instead of queen a4 and then making the bishop move to a different square and then queen c2. So the difference in position, so here's what I mean, and I'm sure you know what I mean, but I'm just going to do it. So in this position here, rather than play queen a4, which is what white did, white could have just played queen c2, and the only difference in the position now, it's black's turn again, just like it was in the other position, is that black's bishop is on a different square. And my question is, why is that something that white wanted? Could also mean that, I wonder if in this position white isn't looking at the h7 square, and because, okay, so this may be it. Theory, wild shot in the dark, and if any of you guys that are watching this know, I would love some comments on this, but maybe this is what white was thinking. White was possibly thinking that in this position, this stops black from castling because of queen. The queen takes h7 threat. Now, of course, it's not a threat right now, but say in this position, black castles, white plays bishop takes f6, bishop takes f6. I can just do this. I don't know why I'm doing that. So castles, and then this. So what about if instead of, since we're now in a place where the bishop is on b7 instead of c6 like it was in the game, is there an in-between move somewhere in there? Instead of black castling here, how about this bishop a6 idea, which ends the threat on h7 because there's nowhere to move the light square bishop. I bet that's what that was about. I bet that's what that's about. I would love it if somebody came along and said, "You're nuts. That doesn't have anything to do with it." But that could be what at least White was thinking. Whether it's flawed or not, I have no idea. But that's at least a reasonable guess. So let's move forward. And you see how long it took me to come up with that idea. I guess I could do it open board. I don't know. It's not something that would occur to me right off the bat, but maybe I could come up with it after a while. And again, I'm not even sure it's right, but I would love to hear if it is. Okay, so we knew that the b8 knight was going to have a little trouble developing, and this is the really only square it can go to now to develop semi-normally. Instead of c6, it's now going to go to d7, which seems okay to me. Black feels a little cramped in there, but it's probably just a feeling. I think black is fine over there. Okay, so white carrying on with its ideas. Apparently right now he has stopped black from castling, and that seems like a pretty reasonable thing to do. I wonder how he proceeds from here, though. Are there any ideas with knight e5, knight e5, knight takes e5, and then d takes e5? It doesn't look like that's going to do anything except weaken white's center. So I don't like that idea. Now let's just see what white does. I'm not sure I'm going to guess a move here, because it just depends on what white decides as its plan. White could just castle basically to either side. Well, let's decide whether white castles kingside or queenside. It looks like queenside is more dangerous. The c3 pawn has been moved. The c pawn has been moved to c3, and potentially that weakens that light square diagonal, which could be an avenue to the king. This side seems a little safer, so I'm going to go ahead and say that white's going to castle kingside here. Okay, so I win another point. Now we have black obviously would like to castle kingside as well, but I don't think he can just because he's going to lose the h7 pawn. Although, I do want to look at the possibility of castles, bishop takes, h7, and then g6. Oh wait, can't. Haha. See, I just forgot that was checked. So that doesn't work at all. So white could just safely withdraw the piece, and black's down a pawn. Not down a piece, but down a... Okay, yeah. I said it right. Okay, going back. What's white going to do? Or what's black going to do? It's black's turn. What's black going to do here? Can't castle or he loses a pawn. The position is semi-closed in the center, so bishop takes f6 is possibly good for white anyway, or at least it creates an imbalance that could be made potentially positive. That's a good way to say that, I think. So thinking about black's position here, how could he get castled? One idea is just to play g6 now. So something like g6, bishop f8, bishop g7 down the road. Well, it would take 3 moves to castle that way. Let's see, black could also just play h6 here. So looking at h6, bishop h4. I don't think that white or black, I keep mixing up the colors. I don't think that black would then continue with g5, because too weakening for the king side, and the dark square bishop would get a pretty nice diagonal there, moving back to g3. So I doubt that's the move. I mean, h6 seems like it's okay. It just, I'm not sure it does anything after bishop h4. Let's look at the position and see. Maybe I can see a little bit better continuation after this. Or why even do that? Let's do this. At this point, though, black can castle, because there's no h7 pawn to lose. Alright, my idea here then is for black to play h6. I don't see anything better, and it would take a long time to find anything better, so let's see. Alright, so I'm winning some points here. These are probably pretty simple moves, and a lot of you guys are probably just yelling at the screen by now saying, yes, that's what he's going to move, now go. But that's okay. It takes me a while, and at some point I'll get faster at this stuff. So white is probably, as I said, it's potential. Okay, A, we have a bad bishop that's outside the pawn chain, so it's an active bishop. And I'm talking about the g5 bishop here. We have an active bishop that's outside the pawn chain, but it's still a bad bishop. We have a semi-closed position in the middle. It has the potential to open up later. It's not locked. But it is closed right now. There's not going to be a lot of pieces flowing through these center four squares. Therefore, it's a potentially positive imbalance to take on f6. So my initial inclination is bishop takes f6. Bishop h4 is also obviously perfectly fine, or at least it seems fine. I'm going to go with bishop takes f6 here. Alright, so there's bishop h4. I missed one there. Doesn't mean it's the wrong move to play bishop takes f6, but it does mean that that's not what this guy did. Alright, I don't think g5. I think black's just going to castle here. That seems to be consistent with what h6 was trying to accomplish. Okay, so here's a point I lost. Queen c7. Black is potentially willing to castle queenside. I'm not saying he will, I'm saying it's a possibility, just because queen c7 clears that back row in between the king and the rook for that to happen. What is the queen doing actively on c7 if that's not the reason? It looks to me like bishop g3 could attack it, and I mean, I'm looking at bishop g3 and bishop d6. So what about this? That looks worse for black to me than he was a couple of moves ago. Maybe not, but it's what it looks like. It looks like black has traded off his, quote, good bishop for white's bad bishop, but active bishop. So to me that doesn't seem like something that I would enjoy as black. It could be what happens, of course, and it could be that black has grander ideas for being on that diagonal, or on the c7 and d6 dark square pair here. So I'm not sure what's going on with this move. To me it just says I want to castle. So I mean, I'm thinking potentially bishop g3, queen b7, which again seems like a really bad place for the queen. So to me this is puzzling. I'm not sure what's happening here. Let's move ahead here and see what's happening. I'm going to predict bishop g3. Got that one right. So to me this looks like the two major options are queen b7 and queen d6. I already looked at not queen d6, bishop d6. I already looked at bishop d6, and I think that I don't like it as black. So to me I would choose queen b7 here. But is that a concession? Both of these are concessions, which is why I'm not sure I really understand queen c7. So it's just a lesser of two poor ideas, if you're asking me here. And obviously a 2700 player is not going to be asking me, so let's just see what he does. I'm going to predict bishop d6. It just seems like he would have had that in mind more than he would have had queen b7 if you made the queen c7 move. So let's see. Okay, so I was right about that. But I don't really understand why he went into this willingly, just because it gives up that bishop. I bet white trades on d6 here. Alright. So from here, white needs to have a plan. Is there anything to knight e5 yet? Knight e5, knight takes e5, d takes e5, forking, except that pawn is not supported. So supporting the e5 square one more time might be something that white would look at doing if he could do it easily, and I don't see a way to do it easily, so that plan is probably no good. At this point, let's see, the e4 square seems to be a bit of a key. Let's look at how many times each side is controlling e4. By the way, if you're watching this and having fun spotting my weaknesses and thinking, this may be one of them here. I haven't even looked at the e4 square until just now, basically. So it's very possible that somebody's been watching this going, all those last moves were all about the e4 square. How could you not know that? Well, here's the answer. I didn't even look at it until just now. So it's possible that was the case. I have no idea, honestly. I'm looking at it now because I'm trying to find a plan for white. And, you know, expanding e4, e5 looks like something that white might want to do. So white would want to have control over the e4 square before moving his pawn to e4. So right now I'm looking at pawn, knight, bishop, three attackers, or sorry, three controller. We'll call it control. Three controllers for e4 for black, and 1, 2, 3 for white. So white has enough control to make the e4 move right now. It just may not be something he wants to do. So rook e1 may happen here. So for instance, here's why I say that. If white moves e4, he's not going to lose a pawn. He's not going to lose material, but strategically and or tactically it may not be something that white wants to do. So let's look at a potential line. Let's say e4, d takes, knight takes, bishop takes, bishop takes, trackpad is acting up here, and queen takes. So is this a line that white would go into willingly? There is an attack on the a8 rook, so I'm going to just assume that black would castle here. So this looks like the resulting position after all those trades. There wouldn't be any c takes d4 in order to give an isolated pawn because of knight takes d4. So the structure looks okay after that. I just don't see that there's much here. White might be willing to go into this in order to get a trade with a draw with a stronger player, maybe. So, you know, e4 could happen here. It might be a little better to play e4 after rook e1. So my two candidate moves here are e4 and rook e1, and let's see which one white chooses. Okay, white does go ahead and play e4, so the rest of this sequence may happen pretty quickly. Let's take a look at it. Alright, so they deviated a little bit, but that was basically what I looked at. So here we have black ready to pile up on what could potentially be an isolated d-pawn. After c takes and c takes, for instance, down the road. I don't think it's going to happen right now. Obviously, we can't easily play d5 here. So after trading on d4, white's going to have an isolated d-pawn. And I think that's the idea behind rook d8 there, is to start attacking d4. So now what we're looking at is, does black have control over the d5 square, sufficient control over the d5 square? The e6 pawn is going to help out a ton with that. So that looks like a good idea, or that looks like a good situation. Other ways that, if you don't know, the idea behind isolated pawns is white is going to get open or semi-open files around it. And we're looking at this d-pawn being isolated in a couple of moves. White's going to get some open files around it, and his idea will be active piece play around it. Black's idea is to stop it from moving forward or stop it from being traded off and solidifying the structure by basically controlling the square in front of it. It becomes a good outpost square for pieces. For instance, if imagine these c pawns are gone because they were traded on d4, then the knight would have a great outpost square on d5 because it couldn't be attacked by any pawns. So that is what is going to happen, or what Black's plan is going to be over the next couple of moves, it looks like. And that's assuming a trade on d5 to make that isolated pawn happen, which I assume it will. Let's go ahead and see the next couple of moves here. Black gets castled. White moves maybe off of the c file that's going to become open. And it's going to be a fully open file, so Black could get rooks all over the c file just as easily. Is there anything more to that move? Really, I may have moved through those moves too quickly, but I was trying to see if the isolated pawn thing happened soon. It does look like Black's preparing for it. So Black taking on d4 would be what I'm assuming is going to happen here for Black. No, there are other maneuvering things going on that I'm not understanding here. I'm just going to go a couple of moves forward. Yeah, there it is. Oh. So all that maneuvering may have been just to make sure that White could recapture with the knight instead. So what we've done is we've maneuvered over the last couple of moves. We have a little bit of contesting of the d file going on here. We have White taking a nice position in the center with the knight, but it can't really stay there because of e5. So Black is looking to control e5 in order to push that, I would assume. I like White's bishop. The center is very open, so it looks to me like White has come out of this with somewhat of an advantage. I actually would like to review those last couple of moves a bit. And there seems to be an important switch here, because I thought Black was gaining an advantage based on the... oh, my phone is ringing. Hang on, I'm going to pause this video, if I can. And yes, that's Wonder Woman as my ringtone when my wife calls, just in case you were wondering. Okay, be back in a minute. Okay, so I'm back. I know that wasn't a long time for you, but it was for me. Moving forward. I've completely lost the plot of the game. So I was going to move forward and see if some of that maneuvering was to make sure that the knight could recapture on d4 instead of the pawn. I'm just going to keep going forward in the game. I think I've spent a lot of time on some of these moves, maybe unnecessarily, and especially talking about the isolated d-pawn when it didn't happen, so I feel a little silly for that. But it did seem like it was something that could potentially come about. Alright, so we're now looking at the knights getting outposts or advanced squares. This seems to be about the bishops and knights. So White is going to want to make his bishop better, and Black is going to want to make his knights better. So here we have White chasing Black's knight away from the 5th rank. If Black can get a knight solidly entrenched on one of these two ranks, the 4th or 5th, then his knights will be at least equal. What I've always kind of heard is that a knight on the 5th, I'm talking from Black's perspective, so it would be the Black's 4th rank, but the 5th rank on the board. If Black can get a knight this far forward and solidly entrenched there, then it's fully equal to a bishop, even in an open position like this. If he can get it on the 4th or 3rd rank, then it would be better than the bishop. So that's going to be Black's goal, I think, is to get the knights as far forward and supported as possible. White's goal is going to be to stop that and to keep the bishop as active on open diagonals or doing active jobs as possible. And all that, of course, has to happen while keeping solid pawn structures and no tactics on pieces and all those things. So that's why chess is hard. Okay, moving forward. White chases Black's pawn, or oh, good grief. White chases Black's knight back with his pawn. Black moves back to b7. He's going to redeploy now. What I see immediately is d6 to c4. So potentially Black has a plan of knight d6, followed by or in conjunction with a6 and b5. So I'm just going to waste king moves here just to show you what I'm talking about. So if White did nothing and allowed Black to do his own plans, then I would assume we would see this. and you're seeing how awful trackpads are for this kind of thing. But that's all I have at the moment. And now we have a knight firmly entrenched here. Part of the problem that we have is that it's entrenched on a light square, so white could always trade that away. Remember that in this position, based on that general rule of thumb, this knight is considered slightly superior to this bishop, so this would be something that white would want to do. And white does have the ability to do it because it's entrenched on a light square. If that piece were entrenched, the same pawn structure just shifted over one square, and the knight were here, it would be about 200 times better for black because white couldn't do anything about it, and it would be a more central knight. It would control more important squares than this one does, just by a little bit, but enough. So that's a big difference in the position, is the fact that that square is a light square instead of a dark square. But it is a nice square for the knight, and black is going to work hard to get that square, I think. So we'll see, over the next few moves, I think we'll see a subtle battle for the c4 square. And what that has to do with that square, I really don't know, but I'm sure white does. Yeah, to me these moves don't seem like they have anything to do with c4. That looks to me like white is threatening to do an exchange sack on f6, which means rook takes f6, creating weaknesses, creating an avenue for the king. In fact, it really strongly looks like that's what he wants to do here. And it seems to be a legitimate threat. White's pieces can get over there very quickly, while black's pieces would have a little bit more time to get over there. I mean, for instance, this bishop is aiming at h7 already. If that rook were out of the way and that knight were out of the way, white could get his queen to h5 very quickly. So this seems to be a legitimate attacking threat. It's not anything that has come to fruition yet, but how does white defend the f6 knight, or does he move it away? The answer is he ignores it and focuses his attention on probably what he was wanting to do anyway, which is dominate the d-file. So to me this looks like black wants to completely own the d-file and then play e5, opening it up. So I'm assuming that's what's happening. It looks like that was in conjunction with rook d5 also, is controlling the e5 square some more. So that's black's plan. White has a plan right now of kingside attack, or at least an idea of it. He's threatening the idea. Sometimes the threat is greater than the execution in chess. And black is wanting to dominate the d-file. So we'll see if white has anything tactically here. I just can't see white playing rook f3 without playing rook takes f6. It just doesn't seem like, unless he just, you know, changes his mind. And that may be what that is. All right, queen a6. I don't know why. Say black plays knight d6 here, which defends the a7 pawn. What is white's queen doing in the corner here? Why is white here? There's nothing to support a knight c6 move, so I'm at a loss. I guess, you know what, I can see the bringing your rook to this rank supports c3, so that's something. It's another reason for white to have his rook on the third rank besides coming after f6. So I can see that now, but I don't really understand this move. So I'm going to move back to the actual position on the board, and from here I think black is wanting to carry out his plan of e5. Well, no, I think black will play knight d6 first. That seems to be the simple thing to do. Yeah, knight d6. And here we're going to find out what white's up to, because that queen a6 move is baffling to me. Alright, so here we're just developing the knight to maybe an advantageous diagonal. Oh, it's discouraging e5 probably. Obviously we're going to move the rook, but e5 comes with a little bit of a downside now that white controls that diagonal pretty strongly. So I can understand that move. It discourages e5 a little bit more, but I don't think black is ever going to be discouraged totally from playing e5. We'll see though. And now the purpose behind this one is escaping me as well. Although it seems like an aggressive square. Why does he want to be there right now? Why is he not wanting to continue playing on the d file as he was for e5? I mean, it pins the g2 pawn, but tactically I don't see a reason that's important. And I'm sure that the 2700 player does. So I'm going to go ahead and move forward because I don't understand this sequence yet. Maybe I'll understand it in a minute. So White's taken the opportunity to jump back in contention on the d file, maybe. This may be the end of the game, which would be a little bit disappointing. It says Black won, White resigned. Interesting. Was there a tactic that White blundered into? Or is this move just incomplete? Or is this game incomplete? Wow. Alright, I'm going to spend just a second looking at the position here. And see if there's a reason, if I can discern a reason for White to resign. Because I don't see it right away. There's no logical continuation here, is there? There's no pieces hanging. There's no knight forks. I'm going to have help on this one. So here comes the computer engine. I'm going to put Houdini on this position, which is the position where White moved rook d1 and then resigned, according to this PGN file. So let's check it out. It would be a bummer to get a bad, yeah, look at that. I mean, it says Black is better, but not even half a pawn better. Could have been time trouble in a blitz game. What I'll do here in just a second is inspect the PGN file, and maybe we can get some clue onto what that was. And I want to stop the video here after I do that, but if I find out why White resigned here, I will put it into the either comments or the description in the video. Okay, but clearly Houdini is not finding any tactics that would spell disaster for White. So I'll stop that. Come back to this position. So it looks like I have no idea why that would be the case there. So let's open up that PGN file, if I can remember where I put it real quick. It should be in here, and it should be right there. Okay, so this is the PGN file. I'll try to make it big so you can see more of it along with me. I'll get rid of the pictures now. Okay, so here's the PGN file, and I'm going to look at the event date, which is February 20th of this year, and the event site. Okay, it was a blitz game, so that's something. And it does say that it does have the correct result as far as that's concerned, and it does say it was a blitz game. So this could either be a flag or he was just completely out of time. So that's a bummer. I'm a little disappointed to have ended the game that way, and maybe I should filter out blitz videos for the future. That would be a little bit more that might be, I hope this video doesn't get ruined. That would be a little bit more appropriate for our videos. So the end of this video may be really ugly while I try to figure out a way to stop the recording, because I don't see the